Hello. Welcome back to STM Narratives. Before we begin, please comment where you are watching from and the time. The sun hung lazily in the sky, casting a golden glow over the cracked sidewalks of the neighborhood. 17-year-old Kiera Jenkins waddled slowly down the street, her hand resting protectively on her swollen belly. At 8 months pregnant, even the short walk to the corner store felt like a marathon, but she needed prenatal vitamins, and the store was only a few blocks away. Kiera's braided hair shimmered in the sunlight, her brown skin glowing. Despite the exhaustion that tugged at her every step, she walked with a sense of calm, whispering to her baby, "Almost there, baby girl." Her voice, though soft, carried a sense of tenderness and strength. Kiera was no stranger to the constant presence of patrol cars in her neighborhood. But today, as she turned the corner, something felt off. The sound of a police cruiser idling at the traffic light brought an uneasy shiver down her spine. She quickly glanced over and noticed two officers inside, their eyes scanning the street. Officer Thomas, a burly man with a square jaw, nudged his younger partner, Officer Miller. "Look at her. Pregnant. Out here alone. She's probably hiding something." Miller, a thin man with sharp eyes, hesitated. "You sure? She looks like she's just walking to the store." Thomas narrowed his eyes. "Doesn't matter. She's walking too fast, acting suspicious. Let's check her out." Before Miller could protest, Thomas threw the cruiser into drive, and they began to roll towards Kiera, who had just reached the crosswalk. Kiera's heart rate quickened. Something didn't feel right. She pulled her jacket tighter around her, hoping to deflect any unwanted attention. The patrol car slowed down next to her, and suddenly, the loudspeaker blared. "Stop right there!" Thomas barked. Kiera froze, her chest tightening. She turned toward the car, trying to steady her breath. "What's going on, officer?" Her voice trembled slightly, but she held her ground. "Step to the curb, hands visible," Thomas ordered, his tone cold and commanding. Kiera raised her hands, confusion clouding her face. "I didn't do anything, officer. I'm just going to the store." Miller, who had been quiet until now, finally spoke, though his voice was hesitant. "Thomas, maybe we should just—" "Shut up, Miller. I've got this," Thomas snapped. Kiera's mind raced, her fear growing with every passing second. She knew better than to argue. She had seen enough videos, read enough stories about black people getting hurt, or worse, for doing nothing more than questioning authority. But the anxiety gnawed at her. "Turn around. Hands on your head," Thomas commanded. "Wait, please. I'm pregnant. I can't stand for too long like this," Kiera protested, her voice small but filled with desperation. Thomas didn't budge. "Turn around. Hands on your head." Kiera hesitated for a moment, then reluctantly complied, placing her hands on her head as instructed. Her body tensed as she felt her belly stretch uncomfortably, the weight of her pregnancy pressing against her. As she stood there, hands raised, Miller moved toward her, his expression conflicted. "Maybe we should just let her go, Thomas. She's pregnant. She's not doing anything wrong." Thomas shot Miller a sharp look. "I don't care if she's pregnant or not. If she's hiding something, we'll find it." Kiera's voice quivered as she spoke, the fear in her chest choking her. "I'm not hiding anything. I'm just going to the store." "Yeah, right," Thomas muttered, grabbing her arm with more force than necessary. The sudden movement caused her to wince, pain shooting through her arm and her back. "Stop resisting." "I'm not resisting," Kiera cried out, her voice breaking. "Please, it hurts." Without warning, Thomas twisted her arm behind her back, pushing her toward the cruiser. Kiera stumbled, her knees buckling under the pressure, but Thomas kept pushing, forcing her to the ground. Her face collided with the rough pavement, her body pressed against the cold concrete. Kiera cried out, her body trembling in pain as she tried to protect her belly. "Get on your stomach," Thomas ordered, his voice sharp and uncompromising. Kiera's heart raced. "Please. I'm pregnant. I can't lie down like this." Her voice was full of terror, her body instinctively curling to shield her unborn child. But Thomas wasn't listening. He shoved her further onto her stomach. "Do it now, or I'll make you," he barked. Kiera's mind spun, panic bubbling in her chest. She had read about police brutality. She had seen the videos, the stories of black women like her being brutalized for the smallest reasons. But she had never imagined it would happen to her. As Kiera lay face down, struggling to breathe, the sound of voices grew louder. Neighbors began to gather, watching in shock, some pulling out their phones to record the scene. Kiera's heart pounded in her chest. She knew she had to stay strong. She couldn't give them the satisfaction of seeing her break. A woman from the crowd shouted, "What are you doing to her? She's pregnant. Let her go." "Yeah, she hasn't done anything wrong," a man added, his voice filled with anger. Miller, who had been standing back, shifted nervously, looking between Thomas and the crowd. "Thomas, we should—" "Shut up, Miller." Thomas snapped, his eyes never leaving Kiera. He crouched down next to her, his breath hot on her ear. "You think you can walk around like this and get away with it? Hiding something under that belly?" Kiera's body tensed at his words. "I'm not hiding anything. I'm just trying to get to the store," she cried, her voice breaking. Thomas sneered, ignoring the pain in her voice. "Then why are you so nervous? You should have just done what I told you." Kiera's mind was a whirlwind of emotions. Fear, pain, confusion, and now, a deep, gut-wrenching anger. How could he treat her like this? The crowd grew louder, their voices a mixture of anger and concern. Thomas finally stood up, taking a step back. He reached for his radio to call in her details, his hand brushing against his belt. "She's nothing but a troublemaker. I'll let the judge sort her out." But as he turned to walk back to the cruiser, he shot one final remark over his shoulder. "Maybe next time, keep your legs closed if you're too busy to behave." Kiera froze, her blood running cold. The words stung like a slap to the face, leaving her speechless. She lay there, her mind reeling. Did he just say that? The crowd gasped, some people shaking their heads in disbelief. A woman near the front stepped forward. "That's it. You can't talk to her like that," she shouted. Miller, who had been standing in the background, finally seemed to snap. His face was pale, and his hands shook. "That's enough, Thomas," he said quietly but firmly. "This is wrong. We need to get her help." Thomas turned to Miller with fury in his eyes. "Stay out of it, Miller. You don't know what you're talking about." But Miller didn't back down. He took a step forward, his voice gaining strength. "She's right. You crossed a line." Thomas's face reddened with anger, but before he could retaliate, an ambulance arrived, and the paramedics rushed toward Kiera. She was lifted into the ambulance, her body trembling from the shock and fear. Kiera was rushed to the hospital, where doctors confirmed that her baby was unharmed, but the experience had been traumatic. Her emotional scars, however, would take much longer to heal. The video of the arrest quickly went viral, igniting outrage and sparking protests in the city. People rallied behind Kiera, demanding accountability for the officer's actions. Thomas was eventually suspended, and Miller, though reluctant, testified against him in court. The pressure from the community and the media became too great to ignore. Thomas was fired and charged for his actions. Kiera's case became a symbol of the fight for justice, not just for herself, but for all black women who had faced similar brutality. Though the road ahead would be difficult, Kiera found strength in the support of her community. As she held her daughter in her arms, Kiera whispered softly, "We're going to be okay, baby girl. We're going to be okay."